G'day, week 2 of the Mr. Andy Puppy updates. Thanks for those of you who watched last week. I had a lot of fun making that video, even though it was only a few minutes, as I tried to set myself up for the week ahead so that I could actually, sort of commit to doing things. As it turns out, I actually got to do a lot of those things, and I'll talk about that and also what I'm thinking of doing for the next week, just to keep myself busy. Firstly, though, one thing I didn't mention last week was, staying fit. I'm so grateful that I have a home gym. We have barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, a rowing machine, and an assault bike, a bunch of other bits and pieces. And it just lets us be flexible and creative in our workouts, so we don't get sort of fatigued in one particular movement and get stuck on just doing body weight. We can actually do some things that allow us to continue to build strength, or at least maintain strength. I think someone said that right now in the current situation, you shouldn't be doing things like trying to lose weight or trying to build strength, because we're in a different situation. We're in a unique situation where we can't control as much as we would normally like. So we may eat slightly differently to what we'd prefer to do. We might not be able to work out the way we do. So I normally do. So that's one thing I have in the back of my mind, as my weight is sort of, it's a couple of pounds up from what I would prefer it to be right now, but I'm pretty happy with where it is. I'm pretty happy with the choices we're making, both from an eating perspective and definitely from a working out perspective. Last week was sort of a tail week. There was a little bit of bits and pieces going on, so didn't quite get as many workouts done as I would have liked. But I did get a few, and this week we really were able to sort of kick in the gear and get a couple of really good workouts from Sasquatch, our gym, as well as some home workouts. This weekend I'm looking forward to doing some workouts around the Masters League at home contest, as well as the CrossFit HQ's at home workouts that are starting tomorrow, I think it is, and then also the other one, which the name has escaped me, the other one that everyone's sort of joining on, United in Movement thing, that's also starting this week. So looking forward to trying to do as many of those as possible to keep the fitness level and the strength level up. So what did I say I was going to do last week, and what did I actually do? Well, pretty good. There's one area that, let me just get it out of the way, miniature painting. I didn't actually do any miniature painting last week. I'm hoping to do some this weekend. I've got 4 days off. I had 5 days off. Yesterday was my first day where I basically just did some cleaning of garage and things like that. So I've got 4 more days off where I'm hoping to actually do some miniature painting. Those miniatures I showed in my video last week are the ones still on the to start list, and I also picked up some other miniatures from a game that just arrived this week, which I'll probably talk about next week, that are a little simpler, a little easier to paint. So I might start with 1 or 2 of those just to get the rhythm going about painting again before I do the more complicated ones that I showed you last week. But that's the only thing I really didn't achieve. I know I talked about I wanted to get into my gaming a little bit more hardcore, and I did that. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is the one I've been playing the most, and I've been getting right through the story. I think I hit 12 achievements yesterday, which are all starting to pop as things are building up, and that sort of indicated to me that I'm sort of getting to that point where the story is really rolling. I'm not going to reveal anything in case you haven't played, but it's the game. Even though it was released 2 years ago now, it's just so beautiful, and the animations have had so much thought put into them to make Lara and the other characters just come alive on the screen. It's amazing to think just how many different types of animations they have going just for Lara. It's not just walking and running, it's walking and running and kind of in the between, and how to jump over different types of objects, and how to climb different types of surface material, even to the point where climbing up the vertical cliff, she has a very different movement to that, to the overhang, which a lot of games of old would have just had one movement. and just sort of, rotated the body around. It doesn't make sense. So they've done a really good job of all the little details and all the sweat and tears that appear on her face as she's been, doing things and reacting to things. And the story is, it's a classic story, right? If you've watched Indiana Jones or you've played a Tomb Raider game, the sort of general stuff that goes on. Sorry about that noise. And I've just love the story. I've loved the action. It's really a good mix of stealth, some actual firearms combat in the last couple of scenes, as well as those puzzly aspects to Tomb Raider that you love if you love the series. But the other game I've been playing a lot of is American Fugitive. It's a throwback style game to the original sort of Grand Theft Auto type game, sort of top down. It's not quite top down. It's a little isometric-y, but you'll notice when you drive vehicles around, you've got two different camera options. One is where the camera stays statically, north to south, but the other one is following the car. So you do actually get to see that the world has actually been rendered in 3D. It's very cheesy. It's a little repetitive in terms of the things, but that helps with a little bit of mindless sort of check out of what's going on. But it's fun. It's fun. It's easy. It's colorful. The story is, as I said, cheesy, and you have a lot of laughs about it. And not too frustrating. Initially, I was a little frustrated when I first played it, but coming back to it, I've really enjoyed the play style. So, and I've just started Super Mario Odyssey. I actually did decide to start that from scratch. So I'm just in that first world right now, re-familiarizing myself with the player movements and things. I also did start Power of Moments. I've read through the first couple of chapters, loved that, and have really enjoyed understanding what moments are and what they can mean to people, and how a lot of moments in our lives that are memorable moments, the things that we think back to, a lot of those are manufactured either by ourselves or by people or organizations around us. And it's really, really interesting to think about that, because that, if you get into that mindset yourself, then that means you can make those moments for yourself. And they can be small or big, but something that actually allows you to grasp onto a moment in time that you can then remember later on, and hopefully have a positive reaction to that, and be able to use that positive reaction to actually do something more. So I'm really looking forward to continuing reading that book and getting into it. TV, I have watched a little bit of TV, 3 different TV series. FBI and FBI Most Wanted, have been enjoying those. Love the crossover. Missing Missy Peregrine, she's out for a couple of episodes, but Jeremy Sisto is another sort of favorite. I love his characters because they always seem to have just a slight levity about them, even while they're a serious character. He just have that almost not quite jovial character personality, but it's always there throughout, that he has that little bit of a lightness in him, in his soul, and it just comes through on the screen. Loved the crossover with the Chicago PD as well. So that was a really fun episode to watch this week. Lincoln Rhyme, The Hunt for the Bone Collector. I love Russell Hornsby. I think he's just got a really interesting gravity to him that really pulls you in and makes you pay attention. And when he was in Grimm, even though he was like the second character, it was really always more powerful when he was on screen and really getting into it. And him being in this Lincoln Rhyme prime character, even though he was, confined to a wheelchair, he was just, the gravity well in every scene that he was in. And Ariel Cabell, she's a really good actress. I loved her in Midnight Texas. I always thought her character there was really super strong. And having her show a side of vulnerability in Lincoln Ryan was really, really cool to see how she extended that and really brought it to life. I also watched the first couple of episodes of October Faction. This is a little show that I can see myself wasting time on. It's a typical, grim supernatural style beast in the world hiding in plain sight. Only certain people can see them and deal with them. And Tamara Taylor and J.C. McKenzie a really good 1-2 punch on that. I didn't think they would gel as well as they have because I've seen them in very different spaces, but they're really pulling it together as a couple against the world of monsters, and I've really enjoyed that. Ed and I watched the Fittest by Buttery Bros. We were like, how do we watch this thing? Because it's not out on all platforms until sort of mid-April, but they released it on Apple's platform early. So we figured out that one of our TVs had the Apple TV app built into it. So we were able to create an Apple an iTunes account, buy the movie there, and watch it through our TV in 4K. That movie, even though it's a CrossFit movie, it's about the search for the fittest in the world. It looked beautiful, and we always really enjoy watching CrossFit stuff anyway, but really enjoyed watching these really elite athletes talk quite openly about their experience in the last CrossFit Games and what it meant to them, particularly for those who are really some of the top athletes in the world getting cut in some of the earlier rounds and what impact that had. That plus the action, obviously, was really good, and seeing the face-off between Noah Olsen and Matt Fraser just reminded us just how exciting that was, that came down to the wire like that. So that was that. The other thing I was going to talk about that I said I would do this week was board games. And we did actually play Sushi Go, which was fun. We played Welcome to Your Neighborhood. This is like our sort of go-to game. Sushi Go is probably the second one, but this one allows you to basically build a little neighborhood of houses that you actually have to number. You can build pools. You can do all sorts of sort of community neighborhood sizing, and everyone gets to play with the same set of cards and play their own little neighborhoods simultaneously. And it's super interesting when we play it with new people who've never played it before. Everyone's like, won't everyone end up with the same, configuration? And I don't think anyone's ever sort of ended up with anywhere near close to the same configuration, just because of the way people's psychology works and think, the planning out of, well, if I need to build 4 2-house communities, maybe I'll do them all on the top row so I don't, get my fences mixed up, or, maybe I'll do 2 on each end of 2 streets, because then the ends tend to be able to be filled up more easily than the middle with the numbers. And it always is fascinating. But what we did this week was we actually did do Zoom with our good friends who also live in Seattle, but, physical distancing. And we ended up having 5 feeds, I think it was. On our side, we had our 2 phones were basically aimed at each of us so that they could see our faces, just like you can see mine right now. And we had a computer where we were actually able to see a zoomed in version of the board or the cards, so we could see what cards they were. And then they had one camera. They were sitting close enough side by side. They only needed one camera, so we could see both of them. And they had a second phone, basically. They had jerry-rigged up so it was face down, aimed at the cards to send us that. So there were all sorts of devices involved, but actually it was a real lot of fun to actually be able to do that and have that experience with them. Totally would do it again. Hopefully we'll do it again this weekend. Besides those 2 games, I did want to actually talk about one last game, and then I'll be done. This is a game called Chai. Basically, it's effectively a tea making game where you have different customers asking for types of tea with different mix-ins, like, whether it be milk or sugar or honey, etc. And it's basically a race to be the best tea maker and earn the most money and points with the different customers. I backed that on Kickstarter a little while ago for Ed, because she just loves chai and tea, and I just thought it'd be fun. And we did have a lot of fun, just the two of us. I think it's a game that would play better with more than two, but even with two, we had a lot of fun with that. We sort of were a little tentative when we read some of the starting rules. It seemed like one player might have an advantage over another. As it played out, it actually turned out to be the other way, and I think that's why we sort of want to test this with a few other people to see if player one does have an advantage over others because they always go first, or whether it actually shakes up. Because what happens is you keep going, even though there's definitive rounds, there's 5 definitive rounds, and at the end of that's the end of the game. But at the start of each round, whoever's the next player is the next player from the last round. So when you're making the tea, when there's only 2 people, usually, like the sort of overwhelming majority of the 5 rounds, 4 of the rounds, one person makes 1 cup of tea, the other person makes the other cup of tea, end of round. And that meant that the first player is always the first player and always gets that first player advantage every round. I think with more people, that would break up more because there'd be more cups of tea to make, more customers to serve. And so that would, by its own nature, mean that every round would start with a different person. That's what we think anyway. So that's chai. Had a lot of fun. Definitely going to play that again as well. So we're looking forward to this week. Just going to finish up and say this week, play some more board games, play some Xbox. Definitely going to watch the Miss Fisher movie that we backed, and it's now finally out. So we're looking forward to watching that as our sort of movie night this weekend. Paint some miniatures and just really enjoy some time with Ed over the next 4 days that we have off together. So that's my week in reflection and a little quick preview of what's going to come up. See you guys.